This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to this week's episode, where my guest is award-winning landscape designer and garden visionary Christian Douglas. Christian has reimagined vegetable gardening, so the gardens he creates are not only productive, but purposely designed beautiful examples of landscape design. We're talking about his design process, from assessing light and soil to choosing climate-friendly plants and creative edible alternatives.
I'm originally from Hampshire. I studied horticulture and design at Spelshaw College, and I ended up becoming a partner of a business in the area where we worked on sort of cottages, country homes, estates, and that business is still going today. It's called Taylor Tripp, wonderful landscape design company based out of Winchester. And I basically did that for about 12 years. And then I decided to leave, having felt I needed something more. I felt like I needed to be contributing more in a different way. And I didn't know what that was. So I ended up taking a permaculture class in Oregon in the US. And then it just changed the course of my career and life at that point. I ended up traveling for about 3 or 4 years, self-study in permaculture and design systems, natural building, regenerative agriculture. And I ended up working largely in deserts. I found a fondness for desert ecologies and surviving in hyper-arid climates and environments. That took me to Australia, the southern US border, the Middle East, in the Dead Sea Valley. I kind of developed a farm permaculture education center out there. And then from there, I ended up landing in the San Francisco Bay Area and started up a design business here, combining both landscape design and the art of growing food.
Amazing. So you've got a book out which is called The Food Forward Garden, and it is such a beautiful book. And it's interesting that you talk about the permaculture, because I think a lot of people do not necessarily associate permaculture with gardens that look really good, like the ones in your book do. So can you tell me, what is a food forward garden? What makes a good food forward garden?
It's a good point, because I lent heavy into permaculture when I reinvented myself. And it was actually really hard to fully connect with people when you're talking systems design, carbon sequestration, water harvesting, growing food. And I kind of wanted that to be the driver, but I found that it wasn't connecting as I wanted it to. It wasn't having the effect. It was almost too complex for people to understand. So having had a background in design, I wanted to pare it back to one single thing that perhaps I could connect with people on in their landscapes to increase their connection with the natural world through engagement. And what I learned traveling the world for many, many years is that every culture I live with, food was the primary. And it was something that multi-generations connected over, knew how to brew. That wisdom was passed down through generations. And so I just asked that question myself of, is there a way to use, the design vernacular and tools that we have, and also, focusing on this one single thing to see if that can make change. And so that's pretty much the essential of what food forward design is. It's really a technique or even a design philosophy of bringing edible species closer to where we live. And I've become a sort of firm believer that, modern landscape design has a significant role and a responsibility to play in restoring that relationship, or our relationship, to the natural world. And food is just a great way to do that. So basically, I founded a company of designers and farmers, former organic farmers, and we've been sort of doing that for 12 years now. The farm team mentor families how to grow food and teach them. We have online classes, regular visits. We have remote consultations. And then we have the design team that are all skilled in, landscape architecture and design. So together we've kind of created and observed together over the years, how do we increase engagement and how do we make gardens successful? And what we've learned together is that actually design drives a lot of that success. It's not just the art of growing food or becoming confident at growing food and learning the skills of food growing. It's actually how we position it in the landscape and how we kind of celebrate it in a different way. So bringing it forward into our lives, we discovered actually has that effect. When we design food closer to where we live on a regular basis, we tend to engage more, we eat healthier, we learn how to grow food quicker. And so that's what this study and this book has been over a decade-long study of what works and what doesn't work and putting it together in a book to kind of share that with people.
Do your clients approach you because they're interested in edibles, or do they come to you and you kind of say, have you thought about growing these edibles closer to your house?
So you're absolutely spot on. It's a great question. No, they didn't to begin with. And I had to subversively put food into every garden I did and just said, hey, this is a good idea, isn't it? So it took me a while, years to get that body of work and to demonstrate to people, and also for us to kind of understand it. And then, by building a body of work and then just really promoting it and showing how it can work, certainly through social channels and other media that we've been able to do, more and more people, the light bulb goes off and they can see that it can be done really beautifully and successfully. And I think that's what we were lacking when I started this up 12 plus years ago, was that we just didn't have that information, or we didn't have great examples of that working at a small scale. Country houses, everyone had, big wall gardens in England that I worked on for years and all of that, but really at a small kind of affordable scale, one that could be replicated. It was just hard to find examples of it being done well. So I feel like that's a really good question. So more and more now we are being asked for that, but I will also say that a lot of people call us for design services and we turn away a huge percentage. I would say probably 80% of inquiries, because they're not fully grasping the food piece. So it's a work in progress. But I'm hoping that with the book and showing it in this new light in a kind of compact way, that can start to change.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm a big fan of, I never used to be, as someone pointed out to me the other day, but I am a big fan of growing food now. So I'm always looking at ways to make it more attractive. But actually, your book just takes it to a total different level. I mean, as I said, the gardens are stunning, but a lot of them are in sunnier climes. I mean, is it more difficult to achieve that look in, say, soggy old England?
Well, I've definitely worked in soggy old England for a long time and done it. I would love the opportunity to do more of it there. Now I've been working a lot here. I will say it's been easier to do it here just because of the nature of slightly more diverse menu we can grow over here. It's a little more forgiving. But, a lot of our gardens, it's not just, as you've probably seen from the book, it's not just about growing vegetables. I'm a big proponent of herbs, fruits, berries. I mean, all those things you can grow in England too. Deer are an issue if you're in kind of more rural areas, or rabbits. But I believe you can, and I believe so much in the book we talk about, elevating materials, designing it really thoughtfully, as you would your patio, your maybe an outdoor kitchen, an outdoor trellis, terrace, pergola area. I mean, any one of the things that we love and typically add into our new landscapes, by adding in food and making that beautiful by either the planters it's in or just the layout it's performed in, using obelisks, other kind of garden art or sculpture, just to add that style layer in, as you would anything else. So I think that's what we're missing, and I think that's what people don't do. And I think we're terrified of growing food close to the house, and therefore tend to put it behind a fence or behind a gate. And then when we put it behind a fence or a gate, we tend to forget about it, and then it looks like crap. And then we end up just saying food's grown, it's really hard, it doesn't look good. I don't know if that's strictly true. And I think that, my dad's been growing food. He does his front garden in just outside of Winchester in a tiny suburban house, and he grows food in sort of beautiful edged beds with all of the things I just mentioned. And it looks fantastic. He puts his dahlias in there in the summer. He has cutting flowers. It's a tiny, tiny front garden, totally different, of course, from all the neighbors, but it looks really good. And he has an allotment too. We grew up on an allotment, and same, like vegetables in particular, and also berries. They can look really pretty if you kind of design them cleverly. And it's really less about production for me, and this kind of mission that we're on here it's more about just growing something. It doesn't have to be everything for the house. But it pains me sometimes when people buy rosemary from a grocery store in one of those little plastic, boxes, or a bay leaf. I mean, you can grow those in England. You can grow rosemary in England. Any of the herbs pretty much do well there. So I don't know, there's lots of options, but I would like more opportunity to do that at a smaller scale.
Yeah, so I think that's sometimes a fear that in the winter especially it can look a little bit dreary or untidy, but that's really interesting because that's where the design comes in. You're underpinning the whole thing with a really good structure to start with. And you talk about in the book swapping out ornamentals for edibles, which is in a way what your dad's done, I guess, in his garden.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of easy ways to do that or tips that you would have for people?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are so many virtues of particularly fruit trees are just a perfect example of taking an ornamental variety. We have a sort of beautiful Victorian style house here that we worked on, which without doubt there would have been, a magnolia grandiflora planted in front of it, evergreen magnolia all day long, very classic kind of Victorian tree that we ended up putting a persimmon in, which has similar kind of broad leaves. It's not evergreen in fairness, but it does have nice broad leaves, which also has autumn color. It just has a nice stature to it. That's a really great example that we used for just swapping out a tree. And the same goes for shrubs, planting blueberries instead of other kind of, knee-high evergreen shrubs. They look fantastic. Edging beds with strawberries can also work. And also thinking about flowers. We talk a lot about flowers in the book too, our pollinator species. So, we also need to be encouraging them. So we plant a lot of pollinator species in all of our gardens. And so that all adds into the kind of ecosystem that we're trying to create. So I think there's lots of opportunities for it. And there's lots of great examples of espalier fruit trees too, isn't there? That will do wall coverings instead of putting a climbing jasmine on a wall. What if we were to do espalier apples or an espalier fig or something like that, if you have the space for it?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a fantastic garden in the book that I did want to talk to you about, and there's a veg garden in a meadow. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so two properties. Yeah, so both kind of lean into the more native plant palette that we have here in California. My place is up on a hill, and I wanted to bring a native Carex meadow. So it's not grass, it's actually a native June sedge that grows locally here. And so I created a meadow which is just full of California natives, so poppies, yarrow, erigeron, penstemon. So I create this landing strip for all the pollinator species right up against the house. And then off of there, we have a slope. And so I transition that slope into a multi-tiered kitchen garden where we grow all of our annual produce and berries and cut flowers as well. So that was a really nice exercise in can we use this low water native plant palette, regional plant palette, and grow food at the same time. So we did keep them separate, but close together. So we're now using the power of beneficial insectaries and birds that come in to kind of live within the habitat. And then they also come and pollinate all of the fruits, vegetables, and trees. And then the other meadow project, similar actually, this is on a flat meadow site. There was an existing meadow there and we carved out. It's a very simple, low-tech, light-touch, raised bed kitchen garden with an outdoor barbecue grill and a dining table. And that's now where the family tend to eat and gather and entertain. And that was very simple, no pathways particularly. We had some gravel in the middle, but we created just deer tracks to get to it. So very light touch in terms of hardscape. You just kind of wander through the meadow and create your own tracks to get to the kitchen garden area. And that was a really great exercise in fewer materials, still growing food and also having a supportive, beneficial habitat surrounding the area.
And kind of on the other hand, thinking about a forest garden with food, how feasible is that?
Well, that one is definitely one of the more challenging sites, hands down. The project we feature in the book is in a redwood forest. And as you probably well know, redwood trees get very, very, very tall. They are water hogs as well. They'll take a lot of that. There was already a clearing in this forest that made it possible. But yes, we worked with the homeowner, who's also a great designer as well. And we just located the sun. Where was the sun? Where could we get at least 6 hours? I mean, we're still growing tomatoes there. So we had at least 6 hours. It's just heavy predation there. We needed to cover the beds. They were covered with these mesh and wood cedar structures so that all manner of forest wildlife couldn't come and get everything. And then in the terrace beds that were put on the side of the hill, we ended up with, cutting flowers and having aromatics and other species that the animals won't get stuck into. So it was a nice balance. But yeah, it's challenging. Don't get me wrong. That is one of the hardest spots. I mean, you need sun no matter what. There's no way around it. You can grow Asian greens in 3 to 4 hours of sun. That's about your lot if you don't have much sun. But A forest is probably one of the more challenging, but not totally out of the question if you have that light penetration.
You talk about actually something called the Sunseeker app, which is really interesting. Can you just tell people about that? Because I think that might be a bit of a revelation.
Yeah, we've been using that for years. Actually, it's very popular in with architects and also photographers because it's an app. You have to pay for it. It's well worth it. It's not that much money. Essentially, it tracks you can hold your iPhone or whatever phone you have up to the sky, and it will show you the course of the sun through the winter and summer solstice, and then all the equinox, and it will tell you across those individual lines as it maps the arc of the sun at those times of year, the time of day as well on the line. So essentially, what you can do is you can pinpoint with great accuracy exactly how many hours of sunlight different areas of your garden will get throughout the year at any time. There's a little guesswork in there, but it's pretty accurate. We can pretty much pinpoint if we can grow winter squash in this area, rocket slash arugula in this area, or radishes over here, or blueberries here, or strawberries here. So it's incredibly accurate. And we start every project with Sunseek mapping the property so that we can tell, is the elevation of the house going to create shade on this side? How much shade? Because you'll often have homeowners tell you, oh, this gets tons of sun, and you Sunseek it, and you realize it does. It gets 3 hours in the middle of summer, but the rest of the year it's actually shady. So then you have to kind of adjust, your plant design for that. And that's how we begin. We begin every project with mapping the sun, seeing where we can grow all the different varietals of food and with light requirements. And then we sort of begin our process of programming all the other spaces around that.
It's obvious that you're very thoughtful about the whole process, which is evident, I think, in the fact that obviously you do such a lot of research at the beginning, but then also you take it through to its final conclusion. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is styling the harvest, which is just the cherry on the bake. Well, it's just that final thing that brings it all together and makes you appreciate what you've got. Can you tell us what styling the harvest involves?
To me, I'm just a total lover of anything that is beautiful. I feel like gardens are beautiful, plants are. I feel like we are drawn as humans to beauty. Whatever that means to each of us is different. And I feel like what we've discovered through design and increasing engagement with getting people outdoors and gardening more and just experiencing the landscapes at large is when we make it beautiful, we tend to cherish it more. And that's part of this whole ethos of this book is that goes through everything from a beautiful kitchen garden design or just an orchard layout or whatever it may be, just a regular design, all the way through to what flowers and what color palette we're using, all the way through to what tools we're using, what harvest baskets we're using, just really celebrating all of those different areas from the macro to the micro. And, that comes through into also styling the harvest. So what do we do when we've grown everything? How are we going to process it? And of course, there's ways of canning it, drying food, to extend the harvest. But I was really interested in this styling phase where you can also present it in a really beautiful way. I mean, we've all seen, I remember the old days in England, actually, I don't know whether they still have the guys going around on the bicycles with the French garlic braids around their neck. I remember that in the 70s. But braiding garlic we have in the book. We also have creating a herb wreath. So using your culinary herbs, mainly the Italians, the kind of oreganos, thyme, marjorams, bay leaves, and tying them up into a wreath that you can put in your kitchen and then just harvest from it as you're cooking. We also have a vegetable bouquet. So, wrapping vegetables or fruits when you're taking it to a friend's house rather than taking it in a basket or a bag. How about kind of wrapping them up in this wonderful bouquet, which is very simple to do and just a beautiful way to present food to people. Again, it's part of the elevating food and us celebrating it more rather than just thinking of it as just this thing we do and just like, oh, we just have food and we just have a basket of X, Y, and Z. How about we just take it all the way through, as you say, to the very end and make it look beautiful then too.
Yeah, and it's clear from the forward to the book, actually, that you're excellent at getting people to fall in love with their space and to really use it in every way possible. Thinking about moving forward, you're already leapfrogging people in terms of the way that you look at edible landscapes. Is there anything at the moment that you're particularly excited about trialling or that you're looking into from a kind of design point of view or even a plant's point of view?
That's a nice question. We're actually starting to work more in hospitality at the moment, which is very exciting for the team. We're working with some wineries here, actually a wonderful winery. We're going to be folding in a lot of these design techniques and having events and having people come and have experiences within, food growing areas as well as ornamental areas. And I think as a design team, it's a challenge because now we're taking it from the smaller home scale into a larger kind of immersive, entertaining scale, which is just something we haven't done a lot of. So that's an area we're really excited about. And also any opportunities we have for agri neighborhoods. So working with developers on creating neighborhoods where growing food is installed at the very beginning and very much part of the early conversation in terms of development and longevity. And we have a few irons in the fire in that department too at the moment. So different scale. I think we're interested to see if we can take it to a different scale and still have the same success. And really, it's about awareness and it's about interaction, engagement, people seeing it can be done and not feeling afraid to do it themselves. I think that's kind of one of our primary goals as a mission-driven design company. And so all of those things are definitely exciting for us. I also still completely am excited about a tiny courtyard that does get maybe 5 or 6 hours of sunlight, and how can we, do the best we can to create areas of food growing and beauty all kind of rolled into one. So I don't know. I think I'm excited just to keep kind of working on everything and trying to kind of show on every scale and trying to show that this can be done and dearly hoping that others will start doing the same and realizing that it can become more prominent in the landscape and less of an afterthought.
Thank you very much to Christian for taking part in the interview. I hope you do go and follow his inspiring work, and thanks to you for listening. If you like this episode, I recommend checking out episode 214, Food Forests for Plant Lovers, and episode 52, Crops in Tight Spots. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.